So up next is our getting to know the private funders. I know a lot of us are very excited about this panel. And I'd like to introduce our moderator, who you've just seen, Dirk Butler. He's the Vice President of Community Impact and Engagement for United Way of the National Capital Area. I'd also like to give she may have stepped out, a shout out to Ms. Rosie Allen Herring, who's the President and CEO of United Way Greater Washington. So please give her a round of applause as well, because we really appreciate all of their help and them being here. And I'm going to pass it on to Dirk. Thank you very much. You're very welcome. I'm trying to find the entrance way.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Oh, no, we got to get it going. Good afternoon. How is everybody? Yes. What a wonderful day of learning and exploration and growth. That last panel was fantastic. I'm not just saying that because I was on it. I am so grateful to be here with all of you today. As Diane said, I am Dirk Butler, Vice President of Community Impact and Engagement for the United Way of National Capital Area. And I am joined by a very esteemed panel to my left, who I will be introducing. Let's start in the middle with Ms. Mildred Johnson. Ms. Mildred Johnson is the Program Associate for Annie Casey Foundation and a former colleague and friend. And as Program Associate in the Evidence-Based Practice Group, Ms. Johnson has more than 15 years of professional experience managing grants and contracts and doing project management within the nonprofit, corporate, and private philanthropic sector. Her career began in D.C. With the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, where she later transitioned to work with the Fannie Mae Foundation. Mildred is a native Louisianan. Okay, yeah, big up. And holds a master's degree in management, specializing in nonprofit and association management. Can we give it up for Ms. Mildred Johnson, please? To her immediate right, we have Mr. Julian Hayes, who is Program Director at the Eugene and Agnes Meyer Foundation. Mr. Hayes has a focus on the Maryland section of the region, and he specifically is conducting grant making in Prince George's County and the Montgomery counties, respectively. Before joining Meyer, Julian was an Associate Director of Programs and Policy at Achieving the Dream, a national reform network dedicated to community college student success and completion. In that role, he oversaw the day-to-day management of the Working Student Success Network, a national initiative focused on providing comprehensive non-academic services to low-income community college students. Prior to that role, at Achieving the Dream, he was Program Associate on education team at the Kresge Foundation, where for 3 years he helped manage a national portfolio of grants supporting efforts to increase post-secondary degree attainment for traditionally underserved students. Previous to that, he was a research associate at Guterman Community College in the CUNY system, went to Hunter College, big up there, in New York, and a project coordinator with the United Way in Dade County. United Way, okay, there you go. In Madison, Wisconsin. He currently serves on the board of Young Invincibles in Washington, D.C. He holds a bachelor's degree from Morehouse College and a master's degree in nonprofit management from the Milano, the New School for Management and Urban Policy. Round of applause for Mr. Julian Haynes, please. And to the far left, last but without question, definitely not least, is Ms. Starlet Hunter. She is Director of Community Engagement for the MGM Resorts Foundation. She joined the MGM in September 2017 as the Manager of Community Engagement and is responsible for creating strategies, programs, and initiatives that drive MGM's charitable goals and investments in the community. She oversees the company's Corporate Social Responsibility Council and manages the regional volunteer program for their over 3,700 employees. A round of applause for Ms. Starlet Hunter, please. So this is a panel that is near and dear to my heart because I feel it's so important and vital. for nonprofits to understand the funding landscape and to understand the difference between regional, local, and national funders, the things that they're looking for, the things that they are trying to obtain, the priorities that they're trying to see in the community, and the relationships that they're trying to build. And so we thought it'd be important to bring funders to you so you can hear in their own words the types of things and partnerships and collaborations that they're looking for. We think this is a very vital part of today's conversation. And so I'm going to let them speak a little bit. I have some questions for you guys, if you don't mind. And we're going to start with just kind of an overview of your individual foundations and kind of what your priority areas are, what are some of the, maybe a brief history of how they got started, and just kind of some of the foci that they're focused on. And Starlet, if you don't mind, can we start with you?
Hello? Okay. Yes, hi. I'm Starlet Hunter, Director of Community Engagement for MGM National Harbor. I'm here to speak to you today about MGM Resorts Foundation. MGM Resorts Foundation is an employee-driven foundation. It was established in 2002 to inspire philanthropy in the workplace. The company felt that the employees can be the change they would like to see. So they empowered the employees to raise money to address the issues in the community. Since 2002, the MGM Resorts Foundation has distributed $80 million within the Southern Nevada community, Michigan, Mississippi, and now Maryland. Maryland is one of our newest properties, so we had only one grant round so far, and we're currently in the middle of the second grant round. Like I said, this is employee-driven, so the monies comes from employees, their own personal monies. The monies come through payroll deductions, and we do unique fundraising events amongst ourselves, like golf tournament, basketball tournament, Taco Tuesday, talent shows, and things like that to raise the monies. So we also have an employee council that makes the decisions on how the monies are allocated. So employees actually apply to be on this council, and then they're selected, and they reflect a variety of different departments. So we have cross-departmental representation. You have people on the council from human resources, marketing, finance, security, facilities, and the like. And they all bring their different skill sets and experiences to the process. The council is trained on how to evaluate proposals, and they take joy and pride in making the decisions into the community.
Thank you so much. Mildred?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am a program associate with the Annie Casey Foundation. Our mission remains to develop solutions to build brighter futures for children, families, and communities. The foundation is devoted to developing brighter future for millions of children in the U.S. who are at risk of poor education, economic, social, and health outcomes. We want all children to have the chance to explore, to pursue dreams, and to discover and realize their full potential, and to grow into adults able to fully contribute in their communities, and if they wish, to support and raise strong families of their own. In all that we do, we work to strengthen families, build stronger communities, and increase economic opportunity. These core areas of focus are deeply intertwined, and improving outcomes in all three is critical to the future of all children. Our grant making is focused in 4 efforts: child welfare, foster care, juvenile justice, community change, and economic opportunities. Central to the Foundation's work is a focus on knowing what works and using data to drive decision making. We fund a wide range of activities along that vein. Activities in community and resident engagement, data collection and analysis, demonstration projects for new approaches and innovative practices, evidence-based programs and practices, policy advocacy and analysis, research, evaluation, and technical assistance. But programs are only part of the solution. That's why Casey also invests in the effectiveness of nonprofits and government leaders, organizations, and networks, building their capacity to achieve results for children and families. In particular, we fund strategies that support leadership development, racial and ethnic equity and inclusion. We share our expertise widely with nonprofit leaders, advocates, policymakers, and government officials to support improved practices and policies for children and families.
Thank you, Mudra. Julian, same question.
Good afternoon again. My name is Julian Haynes. I'm a program director at the Meyer Foundation. I'm very pleased to be here in front of all of you to talk a bit about Meyer's work, and specifically, perhaps a little bit later, getting into some of our work in Prince George's County. The Meyer Foundation turns 75 this year. Our mission is to pursue and invest in solutions that build a more equitable Washington region in which disadvantaged people thrive. We are funding our geographic focus areas include Prince George's County and Montgomery County, where I lead that work, as well as the District of Columbia and parts of Northern Virginia. Our goal areas include housing that is affordable, and we're very specific in saying housing that is affordable versus affordable housing, because that can mean many things. Education and employment and asset building, which we are kind of combining to mean economic self-sufficiency in some respects. We, in addition to grant making, our work, we really seek to advance racial equity and systems change through a variety of different tactics and strategies, through supporting organizations that engage in pursuing efforts to advance culture change, institutional change, power change, and policy change and reform. This transition in our funding approach is relatively new, where we are really focused on getting at some of the root causes of what causes the racial and economic disparities across our four goal areas. We recognize that direct services are critically important, but a couple of years ago we began digging a little bit deeper into thinking about why are the disparities what they are, and why are they continuing to grow, and what role do we play, Meyer specifically and philanthropy more broadly, in helping to stop or prevent, mitigate, or wholly reverse the trend in the direction of racial inequities. And to that end, we adopted this new funding approach, which you can learn more about on our website, that kind of digs deeper into the four kind of components of our funding approach that I mentioned with regard to systems change. In addition to our grant making, we very much want to help lead, facilitate engaging organizations around strategic convenings, bringing people together to have thoughtful discussions and dialogues, trainings, and other technical assistance and professional development opportunities for organizations to help build the capacity of the nonprofit sectors in which we work. We also have a very old, I think, 25 plus year capacity building grants program. Those grants can run concurrently with our Gen Op support grants. We typically make general operating support grants, very few project grants, mostly general operating support grants, which is a bit atypical in the philanthropic world. But in addition to the job support grants, we do have a capacity building grants program that's similar to Casey, is intended to help build the internal capacity of nonprofit organizations through a variety of different ways, including all the things that nonprofits may not have the time, resources, human or financial capital to do on any given day, week, month, or year. Specifically, planning for strategic planning, hiring a consultant for communications help, hiring consulting help for fundraising and development plans, a variety of things that provide just a little bit of extra support during the year. Additionally, newer last year, we knew that we couldn't make requests and asks of organizations whom we partner with to engage in a systems change and racial equity work that we wouldn't also support. So our capacity building grants program also comprises consulting support to help organizations to develop strategies and a racial equity lens that is similar, but also could be wholly different from some of the ways in which Meyer seeks to advance our work. And I'll end with just a bit about what our internal transformation has been toward adopting this new funding approach. It has been both on the program side through our grant making, which I talked a little bit about, but also on our operations side. We had to really take a step back and read all of the language that we had on our website, do a really thorough internal analysis of how philanthropy as an institution can uphold and reinforce issues that support systemic inequities. And so on our operations side, just as an example, we took a look at who our banking partners were and to what extent those banking partners also in fact have a racial equity lens through which they think about their work, who we contract and make our vendor selections. So all the internal policies as well as the programmatic changes have been transformational for the Meyer Foundation, and we excited about the new direction as well as the new partners we're developing in Prince George's County and our many other geographic focus areas. So I'll stop there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Julie, we're going to stay with you. You talked a little bit about the importance of equity. You touched on getting at the root causes of issues as well as general operating and capacity building. And the importance of those activities as well. Can you expand a little bit more in depth on the types of programs or initiatives that Meyer is interested in funding?
Sure. So we're getting a little bit away from thinking about our work from an organization by organization perspective. We're seeking to learn more about what it means for philanthropy to support movements and movement building. And some of the research that we've read about and learned from peer organizations about philanthropy's role in supporting movements is to, be it housing, be it education, be it employment, is to try to be catalytic within that movement from a funding standpoint and from a connecting standpoint. So to support strong leadership within a movement, to support making cross-issue alliances within the movement, and to support the infrastructure of a movement. And so I guess going a little bit deeper into that, we think about our work in those areas. We defer increasingly to the organizations whom we support as the content experts, and we are there merely to help facilitate making some of those connections I mentioned earlier about supporting strong movements. And we're also exploring the possibility of, participatory grant making, how we can really be a convener of individuals and organizations to play a leadership role in helping not just design and develop strategy, but also make the grants themselves. We are not the content experts. We rely on our partners who work on the ground day in and day out to advise and help shape how our work looks moving forward. I don't know if that gets at some of your questions.
No, that's perfect. A lot of exciting work there. Starlet, same question. What programs and initiatives is the MGM Resorts Foundation interested in?
The foundation works to alleviate the critical gaps in our community's social infrastructure. So those priorities include food insecurity, homelessness, health and wellness initiatives, opportunity, economic opportunity and workforce development. Why am I drawing a blank? Okay, food insecurity and homelessness, health and wellness initiatives, economic opportunity and workforce development, family services, overall family services, safety net programs, as well as affordable housing.
Mildred, same question?
I kind of touched on that answer in my introduction of the foundation. But what I will say is what we at the Casey Foundation know is that a child's zip code should not determine its outcomes. So a great deal of the programs that we initiate or the advocacy work that we get behind and the research and development, such as our Kids Count data that is used to drive decisions about programs for youth, federal, state, and local funding for youth programs. All of this is geared toward ensuring that our children have what they need to become successful, thriving adults. We believe also that if you develop the family and you provide resources for the parents, in addition to resources for the children, you can achieve better outcomes. So we have programs leading towards that. And just as with the Myers Foundation, we too have a focus on race equity. And of course, you know, you have to start in-house before you start trying to make change outside your doors. So we did a massive undertaking at the foundation over the last 3 or 4 years where we looked at people who we partnered with in order to achieve our mission. We looked at workforce composition of the staff. We looked at who they did business with, who they made grants to. We also ensured that our grantees use data in a different way, that we move them toward disaggregating data so that those that they serve would have equitable outcomes. Because it's a little bit, you know, different. You can't give everybody the same thing and expect them to have better results or the same results. And we know this. So we tailor those programs to meet individuals where they are, to take them to that next level. We do system change work. One of the initiatives that I work very closely with is the Evidence to Success initiative. And this is where we use data, the Youth Experience Survey, where youth tell us, here are our risks, here are our protective factors. And we take that data and we determine how can we build on their protective factors and how can we address the risk that they are dealing with. And in doing that, we develop a governance structure with the community that not only includes community residents, it also includes public system leaders. So you build a cohesiveness in decision making. So it doesn't appear to be a us versus them. And on the governance structure, they all come together. Residents, community leaders, as well as government leaders in public systems to make decisions about the children that they serve. So race equity is at the forefront of that work. We disaggregate the data. We know at Casey that the largest growing number of youth in this country will be children that are black and brown. And we know this. So we are ensuring, and most of them are in the South and Southwest. So we've made a commitment to take our funding to the South and Southwest where this need is the greatest. We realize that in order for nonprofit organizations to thrive or to better serve those who they are wanting to improve outcomes, we know they have to have core capacities. We too do capacity building. We too build networks so that they can go out and be a lot more effective in bringing about the change we want to see for our young people.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, panel. I think we're seeing some themes emerge kind of across all of you, which is, you know, the need for capacity building, the importance of equity, the importance of system reform and change. So if you're taking notes in the audience, these are things that if you're not currently working on as a nonprofit, funders are interested in. Funders are excited about and are looking for folks to be engaging in that work. As we continue, can you talk a little bit about, as we move kind of specifically to relationships and organizations, right, that you might want to partner with? Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are individually looking for in an organization? For example, a strong board, right, or the ability to be able to conduct a very strong self-evaluation, things of that nature. Can you guys each speak to what your individual foundations are looking for in that regard? Starlet, why don't we start with you?
For the council members, they're always looking for the financial health of an organization. What does the organization's budget look like? What are the cash flows? What are the expenses? In terms of the program budget, how are the resources being allocated? Is it reasonable? Is the program scalable? If you're asking for $10,000, are you serving, don't state on your proposal that you're serving 10,000 people. That just doesn't seem reasonable. That the program cost would be $1 per person. Those are things that they're looking for when they're looking to invest in quality organizations. The financial health tells a lot about the organization and if the programs are actually feasible and how the resources are being allocated. The council also thinks that board governance is very, very important. The structure of the board, if the board meets regularly, are there minutes, things like that, helps to, again, determine the health of the organization.
Mm-hmm. And so, Starla, a quick follow-up question. So when you talk about the health of an organization and the budget and the finances being in order, are you specifically talking about an audit, or is there some other things that...
No, actually, the organization typically submits a budget when they're asking for funding through a competitive process. Right. So it's typically the organization budget they submit as well as the program budget. So looking at both, and they do typically have to submit an audit as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Julian, same question.
We're looking, as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to change a little bit the power dynamic that can often exist between funders and their grantee partners. And one way in which we're seeking to do that is to kind of redefine what we mean by partnership, and not leading solely with grant making, but leading with other ways to engage in thought partnership, in leadership, in convening opportunities, as I mentioned before, technical assistance and training, in ways in which we can be helpful beyond finances alone, beyond a grant alone. We are, part of our internal analysis with regard to our racial equity work, as I mentioned, was going through our language and really trying to unpack what we meant by quote-unquote visionary leadership, what we meant by strong financials, and who we were excluding by having a relatively narrow analysis through which we were thinking about and making grant funding decisions. What we learned was we were excluding a lot of organizations that were mostly led by people of color who did not have quote-unquote strong finances, who did not have quote-unquote visionary leadership, i.e. white leaders, white boards. And so we kind of flipped the way we thought about how we engage and seek new partnerships. And that was critically important because it can be, as you all know, if your finances aren't strong, that can just be a cautionary, that can be a red flag for other prospective funders. But the organization is like, if I can't get some funding, how can I ever get out of the red? And so we talk about this and try to define and think about what does risk mean in philanthropy? Like, what are we actually risking versus the communities and the individuals that we seek to serve? Like, they are bearing the risk of us not being a willing partner with them in this work. And so we had to kind of really reevaluate how we define risk. And I'll get to answer your question in just a second. And so we're seeking strong leadership, and by strong leadership, bringing in like dedicated, committed people who are fighters and who support a strong culture within their organization and have strong connections and partnerships with their board, where staff are not completely unhappy and burned out, and if they are, how can we make that not the case? We talk about building and supporting organizations who are allies, and I would say to go even further, to be co-conspirators in this work and support the movement building and the work that's necessary in that movement building to create real systems change. So we're seeking, again, beyond just leading with grants. We are very accessible. We have lots of opportunities to convene, pre-application phone calls, webinars. I try to be out and about as much as possible, increasingly so in the coming months and years. So again, it's kind of boiled down to how connected to the communities and individuals are the organizations that we're seeking to partner with. How connected, how well do they know those individuals? And to what extent do the individuals they seek to serve, do they play any kind of role in shaping the policies, the programs, or the service delivery that organization is engaged in? We included that in one of our application or proposal questions to get a better sense of how do they actually engage with those communities? Because we all know you can submit a very well-written proposal and application, but that does not always reflect the work of the organization, the culture of the organization, the energy of the organization, and the potential and real power of that organization. So again, another component of our work that I think is very exciting in how we think about current and prospective partners.
That is very exciting. Wow. So, Mildred, same question. What is the A&E Casey Foundation looking for?
Well, I think it's important to note that the Casey Foundation does not accept unsolicited proposals. There are times when we develop our initiatives and we will do a reach out through an RFP process, or we'll go out and meet with organizations to get them to partner with us in the initiative that we've developed. But even in looking at those proposals that are in response to an RFP process, we are looking to see if the organization uses data to drive its decision-making process. We are looking to see how evaluation is used to determine the success of the programs that they have implemented or the work that they are doing. It's not enough to count inputs and outputs. You need to know the difference made. Were people any better off having gone through your program or having you serve them? What was your difference made? We look at that. We look at those outcomes that you were able to achieve. I'm just going to digress for a minute. On one of our evidence to success communities, they received a massive government grant, federal government grant. And the reasons that the government saw them favorable was they had a defined way to make decisions. They had a governance structure that drove how they collectively looked at data to determine what outcomes they should look for and to determine their accountability. And those things may put them in a favorable light to receive federal funding. We too at Casey, when we look at proposals, we look to see if decisions are being driven by data. We also look at your value statement. If you value one thing, but you're funding things that are totally different, there's a disconnect there. So we look at how important is that value statement? What do you believe in as an organization? And if you don't have a value statement as a nonprofit, you probably should develop one. We also look at board composition. Not to say that if you serve one group of people that your board needs to look like that, but we look to see if anyone on your board looks like the people you serve or the communities that you're doing work in. We believe that leadership should be competent. They should have a set of core capacities in order to lead the organization. And if we find that we can help, we'll do some capacity building, grants to help them get those competencies. We've done that in the work that I've done with the Evidence to Success. We also, if a nonprofit wants to partner with Casey in the work, there is another avenue that you can take. You can go to the Council on Foundations website, and you can see the programs or projects that Casey has funded. And if your mission meshes with any of those organizations, you can contact those organizations and develop a relationship with them to further your mission as well as theirs.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mildred. I didn't even know that. So that's why I used to get those calls? Okay. This is just a lot of really good inside baseball, guys. This is fantastic stuff. We've heard folks on the panel talk about the importance of data and making sure that you can talk about the difference made, right? And not just outputs, but outcomes, right? Not just how many people you've reached, but how are they better off, right? You've heard people talk about strong fiscal responsibility and making sure that the organization has a strong fiscal budget and a strong fiscal nature to it, right? And things are being done well. You've heard folks talk very eloquently about connectivity and being able to be connected to the folks that you're serving and the partners that are in the community doing similar work. So again, we see this connectivity and this collaboration being vital. And you've heard again and again and again the importance of equity, right? The not only within the organization, but also the lens by which you work, right, with folks that you're saying that you're trying to help, and having an equity lens and how important that is to foundations as well. And so I think there's a lot of really great information going on here, and please make sure you keep those things in mind, and also the other things that the panel has graciously shared as well. So I guess I have one last question, right, for you guys. Julia, let's start with you. How do you see relationships, right, being built with the Meyer Foundation, right? How you talked a lot about the connectivity and the importance of that. And I know as a project officer, a lot of the work is really going out and making sure you're visible and people are in that you're seeing the folks in the community that are doing the great work. But how do those folks that are doing the great work, that have their nose to the grindstone and are really, involved in the work, how do they get connected to the Meyer Foundation or build a relationship with you or other regional funders, right? How would you suggest they do that?
Sure. There are a number of avenues to get in touch with me specifically on the Meyer Foundation. Through our website, all of our emails and contact information are available. So and we're revamping our website right now to have a lot more helpful information about how to engage with Meyer and other opportunities to engage whether you're a current partner grantee or not. In terms of the relationship building, I think there are many avenues, as I mentioned, to engage with me. I'm more interested in figuring out ways to develop trust within the geographic focus areas where I work. And I say that because, again, going back to what can be and has been an unhealthy power dynamic that can exist between philanthropy and the communities which it seeks to serve is developing relationships where the communities and individuals Meyer seeks to work with trusts Meyer to be there for the long haul, and that we're not showing up with a 3-year initiative with our own expectations on what the outcomes should be versus what the outcomes are defined by you. And one other component about movement building and philanthropy and what our role is that we don't set the timelines and outcomes. That is not our job. We can have our own evaluation, and we can have indicators and proxy indicators that suggest progress toward longer-term goals, but the movement building work and systems change work takes a long, long time. We're talking about very difficult, challenging issues within housing, within education, within employment, within asset building that are not going to change overnight. And so it's more so about kind of creating a level of trust with nonprofit leaders, government leaders, community leaders, that Meyer is committed to this work for the long term. As I mentioned, the avenues to get to know Meyer are many, to get to know me are many, but I'm more concerned and hopefully and increasingly thoughtful about building that trust in the communities in which we're seeking to work over the long term.
Wonderful, wonderful. Starlet, same question.
For the MGM Resorts Foundation, specifically, there isn't an opportunity to engage with the employees. However, I would say that I have engaged with many of the nonprofits here in this audience here today by way of them applying to our online process. Now, through the online process, it's a basic form, submitting a request, but what I typically do is I reach out and I make an appointment to go to their location. I want to see their internal, external community, get a feel, like you said, Julie, build that trust, because I think it's very, very important. Many times the relationship does not have to start off financially. Many times it starts off potentially as a volunteer opportunity or maybe an in-kind ask. There are plenty of times that I have donated snacks to an after-school program or linens and towels to a homeless shelter. So sometimes you have to think outside of the box, outside of just asking for money to get that initial relationship started. So that's a recommendation I would make for nonprofits, as well as doing your research. I think it's important to know each funder, because each funder's motivations are different. Sometimes you just have to connect with them emotionally versus what you think they may like. A lot of people come up to me and say, hey, can you support this? We'll put MGM's logo, on the big screens. And I'm like, that really doesn't do it for me. So just, understanding what motivates that funder, doing your research, staying informed, and then relationships will eventually develop.
Mildred.
Okay, you can reach me at mjohnson@aecf.org. That's one way to develop a relationship through NEEKC. I am always accessible. We like to have thought partners in our work. Many times we will reach out to communities to gauge what they feel about a certain issue. I can give you an example. We just launched a proactive response to natural disasters that I led. And in figuring out how to do this and what is really needed, we reached out to several different juvenile justice area leaders that were in areas that were hurricane and tornado prone. We reached out to child welfare system leaders, and what we found out was that everybody knows how to keep a child safe, but nobody knows how to mitigate the trauma that these children experience as a result of having gone through a natural disaster. So in reaching out to communities, and I use some of my colleagues who are on the ground in communities, our child welfare group unit, we're all over the United States working with agencies in their foster care work. Our juvenile justice unit is all over the U.S. working with juvenile finding alternatives to juvenile detention. So I reached out to those individuals and they gave me people's names on the ground. I reached out to them and said, what do you need? Let's talk about it. And in our conversation, what we found is they wanted tried and true, tested, effective programs that they could go to help children who have gone through natural disaster. They wanted a roadmap to show them what they should do, or should be doing, or could do to mitigate trauma. So we just launched a grant with Child Trends, a 2-year grant, where we are developing guidelines and a toolkit to help public systems and communities mitigate trauma in youth who have been exposed to natural disasters. And that's a proactive move instead of being reactive. So relationships, again, if you go to the Council on Foundations website and look at the grantees that we have, and if any of those programs fit with your mission, reach out to them. Work with them, and they too can put you in touch with someone, as Casey as well as I, that may be able to help you further develop your program, your idea, or your nonprofit. We don't do open calls, but we often do a reach out for requests for proposals to fulfill an initiative that we have developed. It's all about relationships, being familiar with what that organization funds, ensuring that when you reach out, that your mission aligns with theirs, so you're not asking for something that they're not interested in funding. That would be a key thing to do. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. So again, we see that there's this instrument of trust that's there between not only the funder but also the grantee, right? And that trust comes from just really doing great work, doing good work, doing strong work in the community, and folks will take notice of that work. I agree, Julian, that philanthropy needs to do a better job, and I think many people like Maya are working to do a better job of making it truly a partnership and making it truly a relationship with folks and finding out who's doing great work and who may have been traditionally excluded from relationships with foundations, right? And so I really applaud the work that Maya's doing and the transformation that you guys have gone through. It's truly phenomenal. And so I think the thing that you've also seen is this need for doing your research and making sure that you're talking to the right funder for the right thing, right? Even the funders on the panel are different in what they're looking for and how they even solicit grantees, right? So knowing your research ahead of time is going to be extremely important. And then, of course, I think, again, seizing the opportunity. I think, Starlet, you made a fantastic point about the fact that it doesn't always have to start with dollars. And oftentimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes it starts with a conversation or a partnership or an in-kind, right? Or even a favor, right? That someone may need. And from there, a relationship can grow, right? And so I think looking at the work in that manner as well is extremely important. So we have about 10 minutes. I definitely would love to open it up for questions from the audience. You've got funders sitting here. ready to answer your questions. So if we can go around, I think we have a mic going around on this side here, and we can just start asking questions. Please address your question to either someone specifically on the panel, or if it's a general question, in general.
Hello, everyone. Camila Denny with the Denny House. We are, we provide service in your area, some of the impact area around the MGM. So I would really like to know, one of the things you touched on is your logo is not really something that gets you. Share with us what does.
Sure. I try to make the decisions on behalf of MGM that are transformational instead of transactional. What that means is we support programs that are helping to improve people's lives, where you can physically and actually see the impact made. We get a lot of requests for sponsorships of galas and events and golf tournaments, and while those are important to further the mission of the organization, we really like to support direct service programs. An example, high achievement in the house.
There was a follow-up question that said, did you have an example?
Excuse me?
There was a follow-up question that asked if you could give an example.
Yes, I did say higher achievement program. That's one of the partnerships that MGM is very proud of.
Okay. Do we have another question?
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Ms. Hunter.
Yes.
This is a very hot mic, by the way. I just want to see if I understand your programs. I have a couple short questions. Does MGM match what your employees raise to put in the community foundation?
Not just yet, but we're working towards that.
Okay, and what is the average size grant that you all make through your community foundations?
For this region, since we're new, the grants are $10,000.
Okay.
In Southern Nevada, the grants are larger. They're like $90,000.
And do your employees get paid for raising this money?
No, they do not.
Okay, so I'm like having a heart attack here, and I'm not attacking you, but I've worked in the nonprofit community 40 years, and I am tired of working for free. I'm tired of volunteers being expected to do this work for free. I'm tired of huge corporations like MGM making a fortune. And I know that some money is going to the school system. It does not trickle down to the rest of us. It does not. And it's really disrespectful of companies like MGM to expect their employees to raise money for their own communities and to expect us to write grant proposals which are costly to write, for very little opportunity to actually get any money. So I think I'm probably speaking for other people in the audience when I say to all of you, please figure out how to be more generous to those of us that are not big nonprofits, but have good track records, have been in the community for a long time, and even a $5,000 grant would be helpful. I mean, I want $25,000 for my organization. I won't lie. But, right now, $5,000 would be actually pretty nice. So if there's anything we can do to get MGM to match what your hardworking employees are raising on their own time, please let us know what we can do. Thank you.
Yes, well, MGM also has corporate giving. That's not just the extent of our giving. So, and the giving is voluntary, but the employees really, really love it. It's a sense of team building, leadership development, and they actually want to be a part of providing the solutions in the community. So it's not mandated for employees to participate, but we get joy out of collectively making a difference in the community.
And before we go to the next question, I think it's also important to remember that there are a diverse array of funders, right, that fund a variety of different things. So while MGM is a funder, right, we also have Meyer here, who has said that they're going into the community to make these types of relationships with folks. And so I think one of the things that's important, right, to remember is that there is a landscape of funders, right? And it's important to do your research around who's funding what and why, right? Because at the end of the day, some funding streams may not match what you're doing, others might. And so having that array of understanding of what the landscape is extremely important. Please.
Yes, good afternoon. Richard Batiste with the Alliance for Innovation and Education. I wanted to come back to a question that was on the floor earlier that Scarlett from MGM was addressing. My nonprofit ran a technology immersion program earlier in the year where we exposed 26 high school students to wide facets of technology. They were exposed to hardware, software, they built a website, with code, they built a mobile app, all of that. The reason I bring up the connection is MGM was the original sponsoring organization for the funds that came into local impact funds, and we approached MGM for giving the students a technology tour of MGM operations. Okay, so it wasn't financial, where MGM played in the particular piece, but MGM gave the students a tour of the technology that MGM is using, and it furthered the value and the education of the students for what they had learned and looking at it through the lens of MGM in terms of what they've done. So just coming back to the question in terms of other ways to connect with the organization and make sense out of the mission and value for the constituents, that's an example for what happened with AIE with MGM. So I just want to come back and hit that question specifically because I had a specific example.
Hi there, Tia Blunt. I am the founder and principal of Saving Solutions. We're a small women-owned boutique marketing and business solutions firm, and we actually partner with nonprofits across the region. I'm building on my experience working in the international nonprofit community as well as nationally. And what I'm interested in is finding out how we might be able to partner with foundations to be able to access funds for technical assistance and other opportunities, because quite frankly, the nonprofits that we support are $1 million plus organizations that have the budget to help them more effectively tell the stories of who they are, what they do, and why people should care. And what we understand is that that's inextricably tied to their ability to fundraise. But for the smaller nonprofits that really want to build campaigns, that really want to strengthen their brand, they don't have the money to actually bring someone in to support them with that. Are there opportunities, and you mentioned, Julian, that Myers does things like that, but are there opportunities for training and development, for communications, et cetera, to really move the needle and to help organizations more effectively do that? Because quite frankly, I find that the impact is far greater with smaller nonprofits. They actually have some of the data. They may not necessarily be telling that story in an effective way, or disaggregating the data in a way that helps them to more effectively channel funding to programs.
I'll just chime in really quickly. The answer is yes. So our capacity building grants program is intended. We maintain lists of consultants whom we have worked with in the past. When we make a capacity building grant, it involves pretty extensive engagement and conversation with the leadership, sometimes including the board leadership of the organization, to kind of get to the nuts and bolts of what some of the challenges are. Oftentimes organizations approach us and they say it's a fundraising issue. And after a couple of meetings, we realize that it's not just fundraising alone. That if we solve for some other things, it's going to help solve fundraising. If we solve for communications, it's going to support fundraising, development, et cetera. So it's kind of an in-depth engagement process. But I completely agree with you. Some of the organizations say we have found the consultant we want to work with, and here's the project budget. And others say we would like you to recommend someone. So it's a matter of how do we kind of build our list internally of consultants, and also work with the organizations to kind of think through the consultants whom they're working with. So yes, that is part of our capacity building grants program, and I'd be happy to talk with you more about that moving forward.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question.
This is kind of a two-part question. My name is Lorraine Settles. I'm a 32-year-old fundraising consultant, not literally, but 32 years in the business. I'm also, I have a two-part question. One is kind of in response to what was said about MGM. I have personally been impacted by them because I've lived there for 25 years through the building of the bridge to Gaylord National Harbor and MGM and Tanger outlets. I've endured the dust, the deer, the squirrels, the fox, everything. So I was definitely looking for them to come and give back to the community and have followed all of the agreements and things that they've made with the state, which has been considerable. Of course, we all think that more can be done, but kind of in defense of MGM, our organization, the ARC, does get funding from them, but we also had done extensive research on them before they came to town, even out in Nevada, talking to their philanthropic team there. And when they came here, we made it a point to meet people, get out to events and engage with folks, and so they would know who we were personally. And then we started to follow the trail of funding opportunities through written grants, through other vehicles that they were funding. And long and short of it is that they have not only provided money, but other ways to enhance organizations. We get volunteers from them. I've worked with dozens of their volunteers on projects. It's knowing where to ask, who to ask, when to ask, and you learn that by doing your research. So in some defense of MGM, I would definitely say some of what we are complaining about is what we don't know about, and I would be very happy to share with you ways that I think that you can engage not only with MGM, but there are other companies in our region. And I can tell you in my 32 years, I've been to most of the businesses. I don't care if it was DaVita, Dialysis, CVS, or Northrop Grumman. And eventually I'll knock on the doors, and Julian, I'll come back to you again until we finally get funding. And I also am talking to Ken at AECF. So my point is that if you have to persevere, you have to continue to beat at the door, you have to continue to read. Things change. They change their funding strategies, their funding formulas. But it doesn't mean no. It may just mean no right now. But it does require you to partner with other people. You've got a lot of people in this room with experience, like me, Hillary, other folks who are here, Kim, very knowledgeable. Sometimes I think we need to do conferences like this with people like this, who are the specialists, because they have a lot of experience to share with folks. So the last part of my comment was that I do think symposia like this are important, but I do think you need the people who are on the ground, who actually had to get into the trenches, to engage with folks like you, should be on the panels together and have that cross conversation.
Thank you so much. Can we give our panel one more round of applause, please?